Take a look at the skyline of Ontario's capital city these days, and you will see so many new towers and cranes holding the promise of even newer towers. The city is in the midst of a building boom. Condominiums are increasing Toronto's density and thus keeping urban sprawl in check. But what about the buildings themselves? Some complain about everything from shoddy work to ugly architecture. Here to weigh in with their views, Hans Eblings. He is architectural historian at the University of Toronto's Faculty of Architecture, Landscape and Design, and Alex Josephson, co-founder of Partisans, an architectural studio. They are the authors of Rise and Sprawl, Condominiumization of Toronto. And it's nice to have the two of you here in our studio tonight. We want to start with a diagnosis of the problem that you are outlining. And with that, Mr. Director, if you would, let's roll the pictures. The rise and sprawl of the condo tower is undeniably the city's most remarkable development in recent years. The number of towers, their size, mass, volume, height, and the speed by which they are built is astounding. It has led to enormous wealth creation and made Toronto a much more lively city. It has also given the city a skyline, and a pretty one for that matter. The only thing that isn't remarkable about the rise and sprawl of Toronto's condo towers is their architecture. It hasn't yielded architectural treasures. A large majority of the condo architecture is bland, interchangeable, and forgettable. So say you too. Condos without character, Hans, is the way you describe them. Yeah. So let's start by understanding what you mean by character.
Well, maybe I can tell you what the absence of character is. It's easier to start with. What's really striking, I'm a recent transplant, and I was in Toronto in the 1990s as a visitor, and I came back a few years ago, and I was really amazed by this building activity.
Looks pretty different, doesn't it, from
Absolutely.
25 years ago?
Absolutely, and at the same time, I was also shocked by the similarity of all those towers. They were just the same. And this sameness, this blandness, that's, I think, the biggest problem with this absence of character, that they are interchangeable.
Well, you've got a more trained eye than the rest of us do, obviously, but as you look at, even that picture right there, the buildings look different. They have somewhat different shapes, sizes, lengths, looks. What do you see there that suggests a sameness?
Well, for me, the sameness is very visible in the exterior, where everything is grayish green or greenish gray, and this whole palette of colors is just like this. Shapes are basically the same, materials are the same. It's all glass facades, concrete balconies, rectangular box-like shapes. So it's pretty much the same.
Your friend Alex calls it copy and paste architecture. But you know what? Let's just go beyond that. Obviously people who buy condominiums in the capital city here, they want the value of the condominium to increase. They want a comfortable place to live. And all things being equal, they'd love to be able to see Lake Ontario while they're at it. Why does anything beyond that matter?
Well, what matters more than the place we live and the space we call home? One of the greatest things that human beings can do is build their cities, build them as a reflection of their values and as a manifestation of their civilization. And I think that as Torontonians, we should have one of the most beautiful cities in the world. We have one of the most beautiful, diverse cities in the world, not just quantitatively by numbers and statistics, but it's a stunningly incredible, diverse, unique city. So why is the architecture so same? Why are we building such repetitive, invested pieces of real estate development? And I say, where's the joy?
Where's the joy?
Why, for such a happy people, are we building such sad buildings?
What's sad about them?
Well, there is, I would say, in the buildings, a lack of an idea, a story. And most, I think, the great cities in the world, if you look at the great cities of the world, I don't want to name them by name, why you go there. These buildings and places, and they tell stories. They have ideas behind them. The way they're built isn't purely a financial argument. And there are citizens, developers, politicians, businesses, and architects working together to create that culture, and it is a culture, and that's the difference.
But you don't see enough art emerging from the process.
Well, art's a dangerous word,
okay,
because people, you get into a polemic of whether the architecture is art or architecture isn't art. To me, that's not an interesting argument. The question is this: do you feel inspired or do your eyes hurt when you look at our skyline and at the buildings we're creating?
What's the answer?
They hurt.
Your
And in
eyes
fact,
hurt.
Mine hurt. I think everybody's hurt, and I think we're begging to work together. The book Rise and Sprawl is not anti-condo. In fact, we are pro-density. In fact, I'd like to build a couple. But the problem is, these buildings need to be more than an extrusion. And
which?
An extrusion. Like you take a square and you project it into the sky like a giant rectangle. And by the way, a lot of people are responsible for these buildings. It's a very limited group of studios, I would say, firms doing these structures. So I think there needs to be a little more diversity. The old guard should be really, I would say, making a more active appeal to the next generation to start doing the work. And there's some weak signals of that, and there are some international competitions that have taken place that produce things like the MAD Tower, the Absolute Towers in Mississauga. But the fact that Mississauga has arguably the most interesting condo in the GTA, and it's not the Toronto, it's not even the Toronto municipality, I mean, that tells us a lot, I think.
We should actually say, everybody calls them the Marilyn Monroe buildings.
The Marilyn Monroe
Yeah.
Towers.
Yeah.
Regardless of what we call them, I think it's even more fascinating.
Well, here's what's going up here, and Hans, I'll get you to comment on this first. A report in the City of Toronto from a couple of years ago, of all applications submitted between, now we're at the years 2003 and 2007, 22% were 30 stories or more. In the last 5 years, more than a third of the projects, 30 stories or more, and 11% of the projects are more than 50 stories. So there are more and taller buildings dotting the skyline of the City of Toronto. I assume you approve of that.
No, I think it's fascinating to see how dynamic the city has become. If I compare it again with my first visit here 25 years ago, and I think it's totally amazing to see how the city has been transformed. And I think this density is indeed good. But what really strikes me is that I remember eating in Toronto 25 years ago, which was less exciting than it is today. And it's not a theory, but I see some kind of relation if you go to Barcelona, great architecture, great food. Denmark was not known for its culinary tradition.
And
but
still isn't. But
in recent years, there is great food now.
The best in the world.
And great architecture. So I don't know if this analogy continues forever, but it's striking to me that restaurants are great in Toronto nowadays, but the architecture is lagging behind
Has
somehow.
not followed suit.
No.
As we've been rolling these pictures on the big screen in the background here, it does remind me that one of the things you say in the book is that the buildings are almost all green, gray, or grayish green, or greenish gray. And there is a similarity in the color to all of them.
Yeah.
But again, what's wrong with that?
Well, there are more colors than just this gray and green, for sure. But maybe...
It's not going to look like Miami Beach.
No, for sure. And I think it's part of a kind of Canadian culture to be rather modest when it comes to colors. I'm from the Netherlands, and I remember shortly before leaving to Canada, I spoke to the design director of Forbo, and they make those flooring, this cork and rubber flooring. And they said, yeah, Canada is a big market for us, really important for us as a company. And, favorite colors in Canada, gray and beige. And it's...
For a country that has such an embarrassment of riches of materials, we use surprisingly little. Most of this glass comes from another country in Asia. And, I find it fascinating that Canadians having so much wood, so much stone, so much resources for concrete. Why aren't we building a more diverse series of architectures that respond to our climate, our location?
What's the answer to that?
That's why we wrote the book. That we should be, and the whole point is to start to look at architecture as dynamic. Most people know more about their car when they buy a car and its performance than they do about $1 million or $500,000 condo that they're going to buy and pay a mortgage on and speculate on its future value, which I find fascinating because, let's just talk about it from the perspective of, what's under the hood or what the hood's made of.
What the hood's made of. Hans, I want to quote you from the book. You write, coming from Europe, it's unbelievable that there's so little interest in the quality of design. And, let's speculate here. Yeah. Europeans are very interested in design. Canadians are very interested in hockey. maybe maybe we're just
leave
not
it
that.
there.
Well, maybe we're just not that into design. You know, at the end of the day, it's the consumer who chooses, and the consumer doesn't seem to be fussed about this.
I think there are many places where there was less interest in design, let's say 30, 40 years ago, and where you can see an enormous increase in this interest. So part of the story is, and I think that's also behind this kind of sameness of all those towers here, if you don't know what you can choose from, it's hard to be, let's say, informed about it. And so there's a sort of ignorance, maybe. And I truly believe, I don't believe at all that Canadians are not interested in design per se. They're interested in hockey, I can see that, but this lack of interest in design is not, let's say, kind of part of the culture.
I think we're here today because they are. I don't think we'd be here speaking about the problem if they weren't.
If the public weren't interested
Absolutely,
in this.
I think they are. And if you go to the bars at night and you go to restaurants, people talk about the city. And this idea that we don't have the vocabulary to talk about buildings the way an engineer or an architect or whoever would discuss it is, I think there's discussions happening. I think people are really looking toward the future, and we need to work towards a vision for something grand. I mean, what Tory proposed for the park downtown is already the signs of an ambitious project, but
Yes,
like
Mayor John Tory, you're talking about.
yeah, Mayor John Tory, yeah. And you know, like I really do think the Canadians aren't that interested in hockey anymore. Like I think that it's part of our culture, but we're interested in more than that.
We are, but can I, as long as we're on the subject, can we take an example of the home of the Toronto Maple Leafs?
Yeah.
Okay, they play in the Air Canada Centre.
Does it
The
look
Air-
like a hockey rink?
Well, I mean, let's hold on a second. Here's where I was going with this. In terms of architecture, they preserve the old post office, the facade of the old post office, which is a really beautiful Art Deco thing to preserve, so they should get full marks for that. But the other criticism I have heard, though, is that the rest of the building looks like nothing on the outside. Yes? No? What do we think?
I've heard the same.
This is common, but this is so you know we talk about it in architecture and design. This word vernacular. Vernacular is a fancy way of saying how people build where they live, because of traditions. And what's becoming a tradition of ours is a characterless, proportionless window wall. These curtains of glass. Schools are using them. Condos are using them. The Air Canada Centre uses them. The question is that really the only way we can build a building, by creating a glass curtain wall?
Well, why do we do that? Is it the cheapest way to go?
It's becoming more and more efficient because it's being repeated over and over and over again. So what that does is it drives the cost of these items down, makes it more efficient and easy to spec for developers, for contractors. I mean, we built some of the most amazing stone and brick buildings in North America at a certain point in time, but we decided that we would knock them down, and now we're preserving them. I'm not here to advocate for or against preservation, but what I am here to advocate for is joy, is experimentation, is ambition, a collective will towards building a great city, an amazing city, and not taking any excuses for not.
All right, as we try to apportion who is responsible for the lack of dynamism that you see out there, we got developers, we got city planners, we got politicians, we've got architects, got landscapers. I mean, the list is endless. And of course, at the end of the day, you have the purchaser. Hans, who do you think is most responsible for the lack of dynamism in our condominiums?
I don't think you can blame one party for the situation we're in. I think it's a kind of complex, and everybody is complicit somehow.
Everybody.
Yeah.
You want to put somebody at the top of that list?
Nope.
Well,
You
this
don't.
is so Canadian. Let's blame one person, so that we can hang them, or we can make them a scapegoat. And then what will happen afterwards is nothing. Someone will get blamed for it. Nothing will result from it. You know, the problem is a result of architects. The problem is developers. The problem is the city planners, the politicians, but the market. You know, we like I said, you know more about cars than your $500,000, $1 million condo. Which is the more important investment, the car or the condo?
Well, the condo is the more important investment, but, but it depends what your priority is. It seems like the priority of most people who buy condominiums in Toronto is not dynamism, glorious design, fabulous
Well,
architecture.
it could be if the
it's something functional to live in.
But think about the collective value of real estate in our city. If we don't build, like you're seeing values of real estate in New York, London, Paris, Tokyo, they are going through the roof. They're not just going through the roof because they don't have space. They're going through the roof because of the incredible desire to live in those places.
How crucial do you think the role of the mayor of Toronto is in achieving what you would like to see?
In places where you see a strong culture, strong interest in architecture and urban planning, it's usually the product of all the same groups of people who we're now trying to blame for the shortcomings of the skyline of Toronto.
But I'm wondering that, the mayor is the political leader of the city. And if the mayor went to builders, his chief planner, the planning
It would have
department,
an impact.
if he went to all those
It would
people
have
and
an
said,
impact.
you got to stop approving crap.
But that's not to say he's to blame. I'm saying
No.
he by saying that, I think Mayor John Tory has already shown his ability to focus on important possibilities in the city. Transit and the park, architecture and the skyline could be a third. If he and the chief planner and a couple of really ambitious developers in the city who'd like to see a different came together and said something like, for example, let's make this a more beautiful place. Let's leave it a better place than when we arrived. And this was an oath that ancient Athenian citizens, if you're lucky to be a citizen in Athens 2,500 years ago, you had to take an oath to be that citizen. And it was one of the things in that oath was to leave it a more beautiful, a better city than when you arrived.
All right, well, let me suggest that Frank Gehry has taken that oath. Let me suggest maybe Jennifer Keesmaat, the chief planner, has taken that oath. I mean, the two of them, not to mention David Mirvish as well, went hammer and tong for a good long time to change what was the original plan into something that clearly they all think is better and more interesting and historic. Do you think they're on the right track? This is, we're talking King Street, downtown Toronto, the new Gehry Towers that are going to go in down there.
I really look forward to see them in construction and see what it will be.
What do you think, Alex?
I think they're extraordinary. I think the original scheme was more extraordinary. The original scheme was very hard to communicate. It was a terracotta tower, a steel tower, and a glass tower.
3 towers,
It was
80 stories in some
90
cases.
stories.
90
It
stories.
would have been more iconic.
But they would have had to get rid of the Princess of Wales Theatre.
I'm not worried about the Princess of Wales Theatre.
Well, other people were.
I know, but it's a business. It's David Mirvish's property, not the city's.
So you don't like the reincarnated version of what they came up with as much?
I do like it,
Not
but
as much.
the original scheme was extraordinary. And that says something about the process as well. I'm looking forward to it being built, and it's the most ambitious project in the city, probably. But fundamentally, the original design was incredible. They may disagree with me, but I thought that the original design was an enormous opportunity.
Disagreed with that. I think they just thought it was too big for the space. You know, it was too dense for the space, is what they concluded.
Maybe, but
So it's 2 towers now, right? Instead
now
of
it's
3.
2, but they're also very close together. I mean, what's too dense? I mean, we have to build for the next 500 years, 200 years. So the explanation that there isn't enough transit now, or there isn't certain resources now, well, there isn't enough transit now because we didn't invest in it 50 or 20 years ago.
Right.
And that doesn't mean we shouldn't be building for the next generation that will.
Here's the next question, Hans, which is, where is the incentive to do anything different when demand is growing by 15% year over year for condo space in this city?
I think people will ultimately become fed up with more of the same. So usually, if you look at architecture, there are trends and they last for maybe a decade or so, and then the swing of the pendulum moves into the different direction again. So that's maybe the hopeful part of the whole story, that we've seen a relatively long period now of condos going up and higher, that we will now enter a period where things will change, that people change their mind because they want to see something else.
So give us a sense of what that something else is. What do you want to see?
Well, I'm an historian again, so that's, let's say, my easy way out here. And I can always say that as soon as I write a book about it, it's almost over. So maybe that's the hopeful message. And what it will be? Something else.
Okay.
But I cannot predict But I can imagine that there's an end to the number of empty lots which are available. So it's becoming more and more difficult to find spaces in the downtown area where you can actually build a large tower. So that will
But
create.
they
I
don't all
think
have to go downtown, obviously.
that's true. It might spread a bit, but
That's
Yeah.
our big next project. Our big next project is bringing the joy and love of design to the other parts of the city that people don't normally think are worth investing in. The shoulder areas where the suburbs used to be, employment areas. Like, these are the projects that are interesting now in a way. Many people think that buildings have to be like this now. They don't, but the powers that be are very powerful and have convinced people that buildings to work need to be like this. They can't be different.
Well, let's think this through for a second. You've got a Shepherd subway system that's built in the north end of the city, and not very much density along that so far.
Eglinton, look at Eglinton.
Eglinton's got a $1 to $2 billion, I think, light rail transit line
Yeah.
going in across
It's
the middle of
exciting.
the city.
That's where I
So
wanna
some
build.
potential there.
I'm more interested in these areas. I'm interested in areas near the 401.
But what do you want to see?
I want to see buildings that are more diverse and dynamic in the sense that they don't just do one thing. You can live, work, play, all in one place, and the community, and it serves the community. Right now, condominiums don't serve communities. Right now, condominiums provide a place of commerce, a store, and usually in a space that isn't very amenable to a neighborhood feel because of the regulations of the building code making the first floor as high as a garbage truck. So that's why your old cafe now has a 20-foot ceiling. I mean, these all have very kind of like, in a way, simple explanations, but like the condo itself isn't a place where the community goes. I think that these buildings, when they're on that scale, they need to be beautiful and lovely, but they need to do triple duty.
Speaking of explanation, I need you to give me an explanation to something I read in the book here that I mean, English is my first language, but I did not get this. One of the items in your manifesto calls for, quote, mutating buildings and generating hybrid typologies.
Yeah, that's unfortunately, guilty is charged on that one.
Okay, so what does all that mean?
So exactly what it means is this. Take a condo and an arena and a cafe and a library and a park and put them all into one. What does that give you?
Mixed use, lots of different things happening.
Exactly, lots of different things. And that makes an architecture that is different. Architecture should look how it functions. We look how we function in a way. We're organisms, right? But our buildings should also. And the best buildings in the world often do have a form and what we call type that is influenced by the use. And then you take all these uses together, you get really strange, interesting, dynamic pieces of architecture.
Well, do you want to see more condominiums in this city that look sort of like Bilbao or look more like the Art Gallery of Ontario or these kind of funky designs?
it doesn't have to be funky, because I can also imagine that there's a certain sophistication in a kind of very modest form. And it seems to me that most of the condo towers here are somewhere in between. They're not funky, even though they aspire sometimes to be funky, and they're not sophisticated because they're built too cheaply.
Imagine a park that goes vertical onto a condo. I mean,
What? Say that again?
imagine a park that goes vertically onto a condo. Imagine a condo that forms a hill.
Hang on, I'm having trouble imagining that. Tell me exactly.
Imagine the base of a condo that formed the base of a hill. We could build a hill onto I mean, we can build landscapes onto these podiums that we were building.
Did we establish yet which condos you believe are the most beautiful in the city? I mean, I know the Marilyn Monroe buildings were already mentioned in Mississauga.
I mean, the Marilyn Monroe Tower is beautiful. There's a project above 155 Cumberland that's a very interesting project, building on a building.
It's in Yorkville.
In Yorkville. But, actually, one of the more interesting projects is actually being built right now, but it's made out of wood, and new wood construction is going to be very interesting. And it's not a luxury condo.
Where's that one going in?
Out in the East End. The stuff that's going on in the West End is very interesting on Dundas. These are mid-rises, though.
Yeah.
And those are places where
Roncesvalles,
I think, like
6, 8 stories.
there's
that
some
kind of
interesting stuff happening, and there's weak signals. But I think this book is about supporting those weaker signals that are,
Have you given a copy of this book to every member of City Council and the mayor?
did we? We should have.
Maybe you should. Maybe you should.
We should.
Just saying, it's an idea. Anyway, gentlemen, thank you for coming into TVO tonight and sharing your views on this. Hans Eblings and Alex Josephson. They are the co-authors of Rise and Sprawl. And it's a beautiful, I have to say, it's a beautiful book. And I loved all the different designs and the pictures. And I mean, it's a very lovely thing. Coming to the desk of 45 Toronto City Councillors before long, one suspects.
Yeah, we should do that.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Compliments of Steve Bacon.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit TVO.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.